Hi, in this video, I'm going to show you how to get up and running with Kodak's popular FZ55. Just as an overview, this camera, if you already own it, you probably know it's a really inexpensive camera. There's not a lot of inexpensive point and shoots around anymore, and this one is a great option. It's a very popular camera. But a lot of people that buy this camera, maybe it's you're just coming from your phone, you're a beginner, and you really don't know how to use it, how to get started with it, and that's the purpose of this video. If you're considering buying this camera, I do have another video which sort of showcases the camera, what it can do, what to expect from it. Maybe it'll help you make that decision. There's a lot of image examples, a lot of video samples. This video is not going to be that. This is more of a how-to guide, the replacement of a user manual. I'm going to give you step-by-step guides on how to set the camera up, what to expect in terms of what everything is on top, what the menus are, what the screens are, what best settings to have, how to take pictures, how to get the best possible results, how to go through everything, how to watch your pictures back, connect to your computer if you want to see the pictures on your phone. So you're going to get a lot of information here, and I'm going to leave chapter marks in the description. So if you want to jump to a specific scene, feel free to do so, or watch a scene over again. It's all free.
Yes, but you get what you pay for.
Well, let's hope not. Let's take a look around the camera to see what's what. The first button on top on the left is the power button. One short press will turn the camera on. Pressing it again turns it right off with a little logo. This is the movie record button, and the larger button is the shutter button for taking pictures, but it could also be a movie record button too. I'll tell you about that in a moment. Around this side, there's really not much, just some screws to keep the camera together. This is the USB connector to charge the camera or to transfer photos to your computer. Now, it comes with a little power plug. Use the USB cable that came with the camera. Some of the different cables may not work. You can charge the camera to the wall or to your computer too. We'll charge it as well. And when the camera is charging, you'll see this little charging light. Don't get worried. A few seconds later, it goes off. As long as this sort of red-looking light stays on, the camera is charging. Now, there is a battery, obviously, in the camera, and you access it through the door at the bottom. It's a very flimsy door. You slide it to the right, and just be careful not to be too rough with it because it could break off, and there's been reports of that. This little tab will release the battery. You got to give it about 2 hours to fully charge up. Now, you'll get about 200 photos on a full charge, or an hour and 30 minutes of video, or a combination. Obviously, the more video you take, the less photos you're going to take, and vice versa. If you zoom the camera a lot, you'll get less. So this is just a guide. You should always have an extra battery on hand. And if you get something like this on Amazon, you'll get 2 batteries and a charger. So this way you could charge the batteries outside the camera, which is convenient. Link in the description. Now, in that battery compartment is also your SD card. This is where your pictures are stored. You need this to operate the camera, so make sure you buy one before you get the camera or order it at the same time, or else you'll be very disappointed because without it, you can only store 3 pictures on the internal memory.
Only 3?
So you can either get an SDHC card, and if you do, make sure it's between 4 and 32 gig capacity, or the newer, more modern cards, the SDXC, any capacity up to 2 terabytes. Now, this is a 128 gig card, but even a 32 or 64 gig will give you thousands of photos, and the camera will tell you how many photos left you have here. This means I can shoot 9,999 more pictures before I run out of memory. Actually, it's more than that. It's just the screen only allows 4 digits. Now, to reinsert the card, it's just follow what I'm doing here. It clicks in, and there's a spring loaded, so you press down, and it pops right out. Now, there's a little information tag here. Let's take a look. 5 times optical zoom. This camera has a real optical zoom, a physical zoom lens that actually moves, unlike some phones, which are just digital zoom. So you can go from a nice wide angle, look at the top of the chimney, and get in a lot tighter with this real optical zoom. To use the zoom, you just look at that T and W button. T stands for telephoto. As you press that, you'll get in closer. W, you'll get out wider. It's a 28 millimeter wide angle, so it's nice and wide. 16 megapixels on the sensor, a 2.7-inch screen. You can shoot panorama and continuous shooting. I'll show you how to do that. HD video and a lithium-ion battery. Now, this hole here at the bottom is a tripod socket, which means it'll attach to any standard tripod mount, and it doesn't have to be an expensive tripod. You can get those on Amazon. You see, because when your hand shakes, it's going to get blurry, especially in low light, and that's where a tripod could come in. Now, don't get me wrong, you can get some nice low light scenes. Here is at the subway station. It's not overly bright. It's just that when it's really dark, a tripod could come in handy, or to get a group shot with a self-timer. So once you've got your SD card and your camera all charged up, let me show you how to set the camera up with the menus.
If you have a quick second and you're getting something out of this video, please do give me a like and subscribe. It takes a long time to make these kind of videos, and I really appreciate it. If you want to give me a super thanks, feel free to do that as well.
So the button on the lower right with those lines is the menu button. And the first top item is exposure metering. This is how the camera sees light and it makes the picture look right. I would leave it on the very first one, which is automatic. The next item is your megapixel size. You see, 16 is the largest, but it changes, and also the size of the image, the aspect ratio changes as well. So if you have a specific aspect ratio in mind, you could use that. But otherwise, I recommend 16 megapixels, which is the biggest and give you the best quality. This is continuous autofocus. This means that the camera, when it's on, is always focusing. Otherwise, it just focuses when you half press the shutter button, which saves more battery that way, but I tend to leave mine on. The next item down is your shooting mode. So this is a single shot, but you can also shoot multiple images, continuous shooting, just by keeping the shutter pressed. Maybe if you're shooting birds or something high action. There's also an option just to take 3 shots.
And that's it. You just hold it down. It's only going to give you 3 shots.
And the camera does take a couple of seconds to process that. Now, the final option in continuous is time-lapse. You can decide whether the camera takes a picture here every 30 seconds, or you can change it to every minute to create a time-lapse effect, something like this, which you're familiar with. But the camera won't stitch the pictures together to make this effect. You're going to have to do that yourself later. And you're going to need your camera on a tripod to make this work. The next item down is the autofocus mode.
Now this is a single autofocus, which means you get that. Half press the shutter button and shoot.
Notice that the focus point was in the center, but in multi-autofocus, well, it's all over the place.
So you notice it puts it in different, every time I press the button, this is kind of useless. It's like, why? I'm not even moving into the scene, and it's putting it in different places. So it makes no sense. So if I put my hand, let's say I put my hand to the side, does it know my hand is there? No, it doesn't even realize that. So the other is object tracking. So now let's see if it'll follow it. It does follow it. So theoretically, if you're, let's say you are in your kid's sports game, for example.
So using this, you're just keeping the shutter button pressed down in half, and the camera is following what you initially set the object on. And in case you're wondering, there is no manual focus in this camera. You have to rely on some type of autofocus. And I just recommend you use the single autofocus, which puts that point in the center, and then you half press and shoot. The next item in the menu, HDR, is high dynamic range, and this is when lighting is tough or behind you. I'm going to take a shot of myself with the sun behind me to demonstrate. Cameras struggle with this. This is with the effect off, and this is with the effect on. It doesn't do that much. You also get a slightly lower resolution photo with it on, but here you can see the sky a lot better with the HDR on. But only use this when you need it because it takes a few seconds to process it, and the photos are at lower resolution, as I mentioned. Now, after HDR, there's another menu when you hit that set button that gets you into another menu. Leave the quality on best, makes the most sense. I recommend leaving the next item on, the beam. That helps the camera focus in the dark. Digital zoom, well, I'm going to give you an example here. This is a nice wide-angle shot of the Empire State Building, and look at this is the optical zoom 5 times. It really gets you tight. This is another example of optical zoom. When you go to digital zoom, yeah, you get closer, but you can notice that the quality drops off. Also, a lot of times the focus is not going to be right. It's harder to keep it in focus. Now, you'll see a graph on top to tell you when you're in the digital zoom range. As you keep pressing that T button, it'll go up to 30 times. So it definitely will get you a lot closer. Let's try here on this fence post. It's real hard to keep steady. Trying it again, I did get a clear shot compared to the optical zoom. You can see you do get in a lot tighter. So if you really need to get in tight, try digital. Stamping the time and date on the photo is permanent. You can't change it once you do it, but it gives it an old school look. Or if you're doing some legal work, that makes sense. And the last item on the screen is quick review. So right after you take a picture, it'll show you what you took for like a second or however long you pick in the menu. Face detection, it's good to leave that on, especially if you use object tracking, because then the camera will look for faces and automatically track a face. Now, the wrench section of this menu gives you some more options. Sound settings just tells you how loud the beeps are going to be in the menu. Power saver, you probably want to leave on normal. Set your language, and definitely set your date and time. It'll help you find your files easier on your computer. Now, your LCD brightness here, you may want to adjust. One of the weaknesses of this camera is the screen brightness. The screen doesn't tilt, and it's also really glary in bright sun. So not a bad idea to up it to +2. It'll use some more battery life, but believe me, it'll save you in a really bright day. Stepping down to that arrow option, you've got USB. If you're going to use a printer, which you're not going to use on this camera, it won't really work. Now, be real careful with format. If you hit yes, that means it's going to erase everything on your SD card, including all the pictures you have on it. So be real careful with that. Now, these other options you really need to leave alone. Firmware version just tells you the current firmware of the camera. Now, the mode button, which is right next to the menu button on the bottom right here, pressing that gets you into different shooting modes. And the menus are also different in each mode. So I showed you the auto menu. Now, this is the P menu. It adds some more options. For example, auto white balance. This is just a fancy word to change the color of the picture. Sometimes in mixed lighting, the camera gets confused. So like if you're in a gym or something, you may want to play around with this. Again, you won't get this option if the camera is in auto. It's only if it's in the P mode. You also get another option in the P mode. And these are these filters, kind of like Instagram filters, to give your picture like a vintage look or just to make it look a little poppier. And there you can see that N means it's in the normal mode. I want to give you some examples. So I'm going to take a shot here of just the normal mode. And this is how you might normally leave your camera. Just takes a regular picture just with the colors that the camera sees. Vivid. Now, vivid, that will accent the colors and give you a little more pop. You see there's more saturation, gives it a more poppy look. I kind of like that. Compared to auto, you see it's a little more muted there.
Black and white.
Black and white is a big favorite. People love using that. Gives you an old school look. It's great to make your pictures look vintage. They look great in a city environment if you're doing street photography. This is sepia. It's like black and white, but a little different. So again, here's the normal mode, and this is the vivid mode. Gives it a little more life, but just be careful on skin tones. It may make someone look like they have a sunburn. Now let's talk about the rear button on the back and what each one does. That flower is a macro. That means real up-close photography. If you have that on, you can get real up-close and personal, like I'm doing on this flower, getting closer and closer. The flower is just about touching the lens here. Now, pressing the bottom of that wheel is two functions. If you're playing back your pictures, it's a delete button. You can delete pictures one at a time. But if you're out of the play mode by hitting that arrow back into camera mode, it becomes a self-timer button, and you can choose either 2 or 10 seconds to set your self-timer. There's also a smile timer, and the way that works is you keep the shutter button half pressed, and it'll go off if it sees a smile. I try to confuse the camera, but it wasn't easily confused. It got most of my smiles right. Now, the little lightning bolt on the wheel there is the flash. If you want to use the flash, make sure that you're in force flash, because then it will go off. If you leave it to auto, the camera decides. Red eye reduction does the obvious, tries to reduce red eye. Now, what slow sync does, it uses a slower shutter speed to not only brighten the subject, but also the background. So it creates an interesting effect. See on the left, the slow sync is off. On the right, it's on. You see more of the background. And sometimes people use it to create these really cool jazzy effects. But just be careful using this, because you should be on a tripod, because the shutter speed becomes slower and it's more easy to blur the image. But again, normally just leave the flash off or in force flash if you know you want to use the flash. And use it during the day too, because look, you can go from here to here. It helps even out the shadows in the sun. Now, repeatedly pressing that DISP button on the rear wheel, which stands for display, changes what you see. Either it's uncluttered or with a lot of information. It'll show you a grid to help align your subjects into the rule of thirds for photography. You can see a little histogram, but some people just don't want to be bothered and just have nothing. So just keep pressing the DISP button to cycle through the different display options. I'll go over with you in a minute what each of those displays mean on screen, but the histogram is that little waveform which is based on how much light is entering the lens. You see when I put my hand all over the lens, it goes black. If you want to do some more research on, you can, but it's a pretty sophisticated tool that professional cameras have. Now, getting back to the modes, the mode I recommend is P, Program Auto. It's very easy. It's like Auto, but a couple more options. When you press Set, you can adjust your ISO, which stands for ISO, or grain. So the more grain, the less grain, but it really is valuable for exposure. That EV stands for exposure value. Sometimes you want to make the image a little brighter or darker, and you can do that when you're in the P mode. Most people do not change the ISO button. They let the camera do that on their own, so it's probably best just to leave it at auto. Again, that exposure value is really what is valuable when you're in that P mode. Now, if you want to go into M, which is manual mode, and pressing the set button, now you can also change your shutter speed if you want to freeze action. And that is good maybe if you're shooting birds, for example, which really are fast and normally would be blurry, or wildlife like a squirrel. But if you make the shutter speed too fast, things are going to get dark, as you can see, especially if it's a cloudy day like it was here. You can also change your f-stop or aperture while you're in the manual mode too, but again, this is a very small sensor camera and changing the aperture really doesn't do much in this camera, but it's good to know that you have these options. Now, the movie mode, what that does is enables you to press the larger shutter button to take your movies in addition to the smaller one. So it's just easier to find with your finger. Even if you're not in movie mode, by pressing that button next to it, you'll still be able to take movies. I just want you to understand that. It just allows you to use the shutter button to take your movies. And you can see the little counter on the left counting down as you shoot your movie. Pressing it again stops the movie. And here's a sample movie I took in the subway station. Now, while you're in the movie mode of the camera, it opens up another menu item, and that is you could set the movie quality from the highest, which is 1080p 30 frames per second. I recommend that. That's going to give you the best quality, but there also are some other options. Now, the camera does supposedly have some sort of stabilization. It doesn't work that great. You really try to keep the camera as steady as possible. You've got 720 and also much lower quality like old standard definition too. I don't see really why you'd want to use those, but I want to show you just a comparison now of what to expect in the different quality levels. There's also a 120 frames per second too, and what that does, that gives you slow motion. So I try to jump like an idiot here, and you can watch it back and see what it looks like in slow motion. It's called DVD. I don't know why they call it DVD. 120 frames per second. Just gives you a nice smooth motion, but it's kind of low grainy quality. You'll notice there's no sound either, and the autofocus just stays fixed. So you got to be careful how you use this. Now, this is full HD, 1920 by 1080 quality, and this is the worst quality, 640 by 480. And this is somewhere in the middle called high definition. It's 720p, but 1080p at full HD gives you the best quality. The next mode is a scene mode. And what this is depending on where you are, you put it in this mode and the camera will try to optimize the colors. I found that it really doesn't do all that much. Here, night portrait may do something. This is with it off, and this is with it on. You notice how the background gets lit up too, in addition to me. So that's kind of nice. I don't usually mess with this. You're willing to try it. Children mode really does absolutely nothing. Beach, I found, also doesn't do that much. Let me give you an example here. I'm going to take a shot in landscape mode. This is a landscape type shot, and there it is in landscape mode. Here is a shot in sunset mode, and it says suggest using tripod. Okay. Sunset mode accents the reds a little more. It's just a little redder. So when you shoot a sunset, it's going to make the reds pop out. This is an auto scene mode, so the camera figures out with its intelligence what kind of scene you're in. And here are them all compared side by side. I think actually auto exposed the best. So if you're going to use a scene mode, maybe just set it to auto. But you don't have to use a scene mode. This was taken through a window. This is actually sunrise, and this is the sunset mode. See, it's a little redder. Now, there is a panorama mode to get a really wide angle, but you have to move the camera. You press the shutter button, and then you slowly move the camera until that one circle gets into the next circle. The camera will automatically take the next shot when the circles align. When you're done, you press set, it processes the image, and then you need to pray, because what I found was really weird results. And look at that. I mean, it's just bizarre. It did not come out right. Look at these steps. So try it at your own risk. It's not great. Here's another example. Again, you press the shutter button one time, and then you move the camera. You can tell the camera if you want to move it right or left, but I'm moving it right until the circles align. And then, again, in my backyard, I mean, the fences look like they were put together by someone who was drunk. So this is something that sounds useful, Face Beautifier. Not that I need it, but I'm just going to show you guys just for the purpose of this video. Not that I need it. I wanted to make that clear. So I have a Face Beautifier mode. This is with it off, and I'll show you with it on. And actually, I don't know. I think this is with it off. This is with it on. Yeah, I'm more beautiful.
You are so hot.
Thank you. And to make yourself even hotter, you can add skin softening and eye brightening, or even make your eyes bigger if you so choose. Now let's go through the on-screen legends. That P is program auto mode. That will change with different modes. This shows them in the single autofocus mode. This is the exposure mode, which I set to auto. This shows that I have the flash set to completely off. This is my aperture, which I have the camera is going to decide on that. But in case you want to know, this is the shutter speed. You really want to be above like 1/30th to hold it steady, by the way. This is the exposure. And remember, when you're in the P mode, you can raise or lower that, and it will show plus or minus depending on what you're doing to make the scene brighter or darker. And this is auto. That's ISO stands for gain or grain in the image, adjusting the light value. Just leave it on auto. This is how much time on the card you have left to record a movie, almost 4 hours at full HD quality. If you drop the quality, you'll have more time left on the card to record a movie. This says how many photos I can get on my card. How many are left? 9,999. It's actually more, based on 16 megapixel image size. So if you drop the image size, you'll even get more. This shows I'm in the normal mode for those filters. If you change a filter, you'll see the change there. Auto white balance, you're normally going to leave that on auto. If you change it to outdoor, you'll see a little sun icon. This shows you're recording your pictures to your SD card, and the little battery icon shows that I've got a full charge since it's all filled up. But it can be a little misleading. That's why I always recommend you have another battery. Let's talk about playing back your images.
This arrow here enables playback mode. And you can see your picture like this. Now, if you want to zoom into the picture, you press the T button, and to navigate around, you use the wheel, and you can check whether the image was focused or you got the image. When you hit the set button, it'll bring you back to full screen. And to get out of the playback, you press the arrow again, or you can just press the shutter button, and in about a half a second, it'll get you back into camera mode. So this arrow gets you back in and out. Again, we use this garbage can to delete an image if you want. You can only delete one at a time. If you go into the menu, there's some options you can do. HDR. You can sort of change and make it a little brighter. That's not something you're probably going to want to do, but it's there. You can also touch up a photo. If there's red eye, you could do that. It says this image cannot be edited. So
that's because it doesn't detect the face. The subject is too far away, but we'll check that out again.
But this is good if you want to rotate it, if it's in the wrong orientation. If you want to resize it to a different size image, maybe you want to send it to someone, you could do that. Just keep going down here. And this is color. So you can apply these effects afterwards. So what's nice is that you have the ability to shoot in normal and then apply the effect. This way it's not baked in, because when you do it the other way, it's baked into the cake. Now just so you know, this is how you zoom into your photos. If you hit W again where you're in the widescreen, you get like a wider view. Okay, and then you could like just have a grid and sort of cycle through. If you're looking for a specific photo, it may just make it a lot easier to go through the grid. So let me take a look here and let's try that effect again. If we could touch it up. Eye enlargement, what does that do? Are my eyes bigger?
Well, here's the original. Well, maybe very slightly. You don't want to make someone's eyes too big. It'll look weird.
Eye brightening, skin soften, and there's no red eye detected. So you have these options. You cycle through your pictures by just hitting on the left wheel to go back or the right to go forward. Now, if you see this is a movie, because there's a little playback button in the middle. A little movie button there shows that it's a movie. Hitting the set button will start playing the movie with sound. Now, if you hit the set button again, it'll pause it, and you have some options. By going up, it'll start it again from the beginning. And going up, you can also change the volume by hitting up and down. Will change the volume. Pressing in the center again stops it. Hitting left will go frame by frame to get to a certain point. The same thing with the right. And when you go down on the wheel, sort of resets it to the beginning. So it's just basic controls. It's pretty intuitive. Again, going up, if you're like in a quiet place and you don't want to hear the volume, you can adjust the volume with this up and down button on the wheel.
Now, to watch your pictures back on your computer, you simply take the SD card out and put it into your computer or laptop. Or you can connect the USB cable from the camera directly into the computer. This way you don't have to take out the SD card. Now, what about watching your photos on your phone? Unfortunately, there's no Wi-Fi or Bluetooth in this $139 camera to do that. So you'll have to invest in a relatively inexpensive SD card to phone adapter cable. Now, depending if it's a USB-C or a Lightning cable, if you have an older phone, you have to get the right connector to your phone. And most phones will allow you to look at the files on the card and transfer them over to your photo library or to your files. But it's going to depend on the phone that you have. Now, we're going to get to the frequently asked questions and suggestions section of the video, but here's some sample photos from the KODAK PixPro FZ55. How small is it, and can it fit in a pocket? Well, does that answer that question? It's 3.7 ounces, and, well, this is small.
This is so small.
The fastest aperture, or f-stop, of the camera is f3.9. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with that, basically that means that the lens is not very good in low light. You also won't get a lot of, the background separation that you see sometimes in professional photos. You're not going to get that because there's a small sensor inside the camera. But you can get a little bit more by trying to zoom in from far away or getting close to your subjects, very close to your subjects. That will make the background a little more out of focus. I'm actually recording this in movie mode right now. Yes, there have been reports of the cameras breaking. I would just say be very careful with it. If you can get a good deal on an extended warranty, do that. It's very easy to put it in your pocket, so try not to jam it in or be rough with it. The camera is not shockproof. So that means you want to be careful with it and not have butterfingers. Don't drop it. Don't use it on a motorcycle. It's not an action camera. Remember, don't get it too wet either. No, this isn't your grandfather's Kodak camera. Kodak company is different than the old Eastman Kodak company, which was out of business basically. That was the film company. The name was licensed out. Kodak cameras have the same insignia, but it's not the same company of old. The camera does not shoot RAW.
Unfortunately, the camera does not come with the SD card. You do have to buy it, but again, you don't need a high capacity card, and they're pretty inexpensive.
It's actually quite good, especially if there's enough light. Look at this building all the way in the background, nice wide angle. And we're going to zoom up to the maximum optical quality. Don't even need digital to get in really tight. Here's the 5x optical zoom.
A tip I could give you is, I know there's a zoom and it's often tempting to use the zoom all the time, but try not to, because your hit rate will be a little lower, especially if there's a little movement in the scene. So especially also if you're in lower light, it's going to get very grainy because that aperture gets slower, meaning the grain goes up and the blurriness factor goes up. So the camera works best in the wider angle. You can definitely zoom, especially if your subject is stationary. And if you can, try to take more than one shot just in case, you know, the first shot doesn't come out clear. The camera is not really a professional video camera. It does not have a microphone jack.
Now, I want to add, if you record a long video segment, you may notice in your computer that it's broken up into different files. That's normal. As a tip, try not to do this when shooting video. Don't zoom, don't pan too much. Just keep the camera steady and let the action happen.
What's that? Will this take better pictures than your phone? Probably not, in most cases. Your phone has more advanced computational photography features, there's more processing in there. This is basic, but you know, you get that Y2K vibe out of it. You never know what you're going to get. It's more inconsistent, which also means that it's charming.
So I took this shot of Macy's with both the Kodak and the iPhone at the same time. It was an iPhone 17. Can you tell which is which? Yep, so the one on the left is the iPhone 17, and here is the Kodak. There, besides one's tilted a little bit, you can get an idea. I mean, they're going to give you similar type results, but you've got a dedicated camera here.
What's that, you ask? Can you use an external USB power supply? Unfortunately not. You have to use the specific batteries that this camera takes, but again, you can get them cheaply on Amazon with a charger as well. So who exactly is this camera for? For beginners, I would say. We know it's not a professional camera. It certainly doesn't cost as much as a professional camera. But if you're intimidated by having a professional camera, a really big camera you don't want to lug around, but you want to get into the photography experience, this might be for you because it's pretty simple. It's point and shoot, literally. Half press the shutter button to focus and then shoot. But you can also, as I showed you in the video, adjust some controls to give you some flexibility like shutter speed and gain and aperture. So if you want to start getting into photography, you can. Also maybe for kids, you don't want to get them an expensive camera, but you want to cultivate their interest in photography. Maybe they're showing an interest in photography. Hey, you know what? You break this out at a party, you get looks like, you have a real camera? Wow.
The life of the party.
Well, you made it to the end. I hope your eyes aren't glossing over. Thanks so much for watching. Shoot me up with any additional questions or comments you have. Thanks so much for watching. Hit that like and subscribe. See you in the next video.